We can now bring in the African Transformation Movement leader, Nkhwebane, who's joining us tonight. A very good evening to you, sir. Grateful for your time. So, Richard Jantyi, the chairperson of the inquiry, says that allegations have now been made. They've been taken to the relevant authorities, yet there is this call for him to recuse himself. Why not wait for the legal processes to unfold and see whether indeed he is linked to this extortion claim?
Evening. Firstly, these are very, very serious allegations. Secondly, the process that is there, or the inquiry that is there, it is a very, very important inquiry. It is a first of its kind in our country, whereby Parliament is seized with a motion to determine the fitness of a head of a Chapter 9 institution. Therefore, it is our view as the ATM that that process must be above board. It must be free from corruption, and it must never be tainted. So if there is any information that is there in the public domain, particularly now that a case has been opened, that the person that is presiding over this process may have solicited bribes from the husband of Advocate Mkhwebane, it is something not to be taken lightly. Look, it is we know in our country that these investigations in terms of cases opened with the police, they take years. I'll take, for example, the issue of Palapala. Last year in June, a case was opened with the police station. It is a year later, and there's no justice that has been served. So our call as the ATM is simple, that the committee must process what is in the public domain, what is before the committee, so that it satisfies itself that the person that is presiding over the work of the committee is not tainted, is not a person that is, operating in an unfair manner simply because he is not motivated by good governance and the ethos of public service, but rather is motivated by financial interest in terms of his work. So we as a committee can look at the WhatsApp messages and the audio to say, with the information that is before us, we think that it does not warrant us and that person must continue. Or with the information that is before us, it does warrant that the person cannot continue. We need to find a new chairperson that will be dependable, that he will not be corrupt and will seek bribes in order to influence the outcome of the process.
Right. The challenge, though, with text messages, with audio, is that there may also be an added layer where all of that has to be authenticated to determine whether indeed it came from the said person to the other party, etc. In the absence of that, or even if it gets to that point, do you believe that Richard Jantyi should then recuse himself nonetheless? What I mean by that is, do you believe that the mere allegation against him alone taints him to such an extent that he cannot continue to chair this committee?
It is not just a mere allegation. There is a case opened, and the police ought to be investigating, meaning there is something that is done by the police. It is not Advocate Mkhwebane saying in a media article that this is what has happened, but rather there is a case opened. And we'll recall in the case of Dr. Zweli Mkhize that when there was an allegation of wrongdoing from his side, it is best practice for a person to actually step aside so that the investigation can happen untainted and he does not influence the investigation. It is simple here. You've got a person that is presiding over the inquiry that is accused of soliciting bribes in order to direct the inquiry in a certain direction. Therefore, we would be failing our moral duty as members of parliament if we just, ignore that there is a case that has been opened. At the same time, we cannot say we are going to wait for the police, whereas we as members of parliament, we've got methods, we've got mechanisms within our disposal, which we could determine whether, in light of the evidence that is before us, including the audio, the WhatsApp messages, this is the best course of action. If need be, we can even employ IT specialists that can authenticate whether these messages were sent from the correct person or verify all of what you've just said. But what's important is that there must be action from our side.
But to be clear, you're saying guilty or not, this allegation or the charge taken to police involving, the case taken to police involving, allegedly, Mr. Jantyi, is enough reason for him at this stage, guilty or not, to step aside, to recuse himself. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, look, Tembekile, we're not saying the inquiry must stop. There is many members of that committee who can continue chairing that process. However, we cannot be tolerant of such allegations whereby we are seemingly comfortable that the person that is presiding over the process is a person that is alleged to have committed certain wrongdoing, including corruption and bribery. Now, let's say, the police do their work. After months after the inquiry is done, the police do find that Mr. Jantyi has committed that wrongdoing. Now, it will make that entire report, the time and the resources that have been spent in doing the work, null and void, because there's no way in which Advocate Mkhwebane would be fine with that, because they would need to seek to overturn that report on the basis of what the police would have found. So we as the ATM were suggesting that we need to play it safe and make sure that the process is free from potential harm, in the sense that free from later on you find that the process gets to be overturned because we did not do our job of making sure that we test these allegations and we satisfy ourselves as a committee that Mr. Jantyi can continue chairing that particular committee.
Would you say, Mr. Zungula, that this is the greatest threat to the integrity of this process, the greatest it's faced, in fact, since inception?
Indeed, indeed. Look, when you read those messages and you follow how the attitude of Mr. Jantyi has been changing from time to time, one would believe that maybe there is truth to this allegation. And recall that when this made the news headlines earlier, people denied. When WhatsApp messages were shared, then the story changed. And people like deflecting it to say that the work of the committee, it is to inquire whether Mr. Advocate Mkhwebane is fit to hold office, which is true. However, if there is a part of the process which includes the presiding officer of the process is accused of, seeking bribes, it is a very, very serious matter, Tembekile. We can't sit back and allow a person that is a member of parliament that took an oath to be loyal and faithful to the constitution and the republic, but now when they are exercising their duty as members of parliament, they are exercising their duties, wanting to seek gratification in terms of bribes. So that is why, as a ATM, we do not want a tainted process. We do not want a process that will erode the trust the citizens ought to have on Parliament. That is why we are saying, notwithstanding the investigations that will be done by the police, but Parliament itself must do its part in order to satisfy itself.
Well,
Parliament has got this weakness of wanting others.
Parliament has already said to the public protector, the suspended public protector, that this is an issue better dealt with by the ethics committee. Is that not the best vehicle? And I ask that question knowing that A, Mr. Jantyi is part of the committee that you're part of, but also it's already such a committee that is split on what to do with the allegations in the first place. So maybe a neutral venue in the form of the ethics committee. And I know it can't be neutral because it's all political, but perhaps that is the best place to go through the messages themselves and give all parties a hearing.
Look, like we're saying, notwithstanding what the SAPS would be doing and the ethics committee would be doing, but the implicated committee has got a responsibility to say, in light of this, let's take a decision that Mr. Jantyi must step aside up until the ethics committee concludes on its work. But we can't have the Section 194 committee just continuing as per normal, as if nothing has happened, and relegate its responsibilities to other institutions. That is why we're saying that let the committee process what is before it and the case that has been opened, and then take a decision. But the committee must not just delegate its responsibilities to other institutions and other committees,
right,
as if it does not have the wisdom to determine its way forward.
Final question for you. Richard Jantyi says he's done nothing wrong. Do you believe him?
No, I don't believe him. Because if you were to look at today's engagements, as soon as Advocate Mkhwebane was talking about the audio recording, he started becoming agitated to an extent of shutting down and censoring Advocate Mkhwebane. A person that has got nothing to hide, would have been fine with Advocate Mkhwebane speaking about the evidence, speaking about the audio recording as much as they want. But a person who gets agitated, you see on his face that lo mntu lona unengxaki. When Advocate Mkhwebane is talking about the audio, that person clearly shows that he's got something to hide.
From the African Transformation Movement, good to speak to you as always. Thank you.